You want to know the real secret? The one truth that separates the men who die broke from the men who build fortunes that echo through generations? It's not what you think. It's not about finding the perfect stock. It's not about timing the exact bottom or top. It's not even about being smarter than the next fellow. The secret, my friend, is something far simpler and infinitely more difficult. It's about the size of your position when you're wrong. I've made millions. I've lost millions. I've stood at the ticker tape and watched fortunes materialize and evaporate in the same afternoon. And through it all, through every boom and bust, every panic and rally, I learned one fundamental truth that most speculators never grasp until it's too late. Small trades are the foundation upon which legendary track records are built. Now I can already hear what you're thinking. Livermore, you made your fortune on big moves. You shorted the crash of 1907. You made $4 million in a single day in 1929. How can you sit there and tell me that small trades matter? And you'd be right to question it. But here's what you're missing. Those big wins, those legendary trades that made the newspapers, they were only possible because I survived long enough to take them. And I survived because I learned painfully through bankruptcy and humiliation that you must keep your losses small. Before we go further, I want you to do something for me. Down in that description below this video, you'll find links to 2 resources I've prepared. The first is Thinking Like Jesse Livermore, Mastering the Market with Discipline, Patience, and Risk. The second is The Livermore Journal, a 90-day trading psychology workbook. These aren't just books. They're the distilled wisdom of a lifetime spent in the arena. Check them out when you're done here. They'll change how you think about this game. Now, where was I? Ah, yes, the size of your trades. You see, the market doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't care that you need to make back what you lost last week. It doesn't care that you're certain, absolutely certain, that this stock is going to double. The market is an impersonal force, and it will take everything you have if you let it. I learned this lesson the hard way. Not once, but 3 times I went bust. 3 times I built myself back from nothing. And each time, do you know what the common thread was? Overtrading. Taking positions too large for my capital. Betting the farm on what I thought was a sure thing. There are no sure things in speculation, my friend. None. The first time I went broke, I was young, cocky. I'd made money in the bucket shops, reading the tape like it was my native language. I thought I had it figured out. I thought I was invincible. So when I got my first real stake, what did I do? I bet it all on what I was certain would be a winner, and I was right about the direction, but I was wrong about the timing. The stock went against me first, and because my position was too large, I got shaken out before the move I anticipated ever materialized. I watched from the sidelines as the stock did exactly what I said it would, but I wasn't in it anymore. I was broke. That taught me something, but not enough. The second time I went bust, it was a different scenario, but the same fundamental error. I'd made a good sum of money. I was riding high, and I got impatient. Instead of waiting for the perfect setup, instead of letting the market come to me, I forced trades. I took larger positions than I should have because I wanted to accelerate my returns. I wanted to be rich faster. The market doesn't reward impatience, it punishes it. The third time was the hardest. By then I should have known better. But success is a dangerous thing. It makes you forget the lessons you learned in poverty. I'd made a fortune in the 1907 panic. I was famous, respected, and I started to believe my own legend. I started taking positions that were too large, even for my substantial capital. And when the market turned against me, I didn't have the discipline to cut my losses small. I held on, convinced I was right, convinced the market would eventually see things my way. It didn't, and I lost everything. You know what I did after that third bankruptcy? I didn't jump back into the market immediately. I sat out, I watched, I studied, and I made myself a set of rules. Simple rules, rules that a child could understand. And the very first rule, the foundation of everything else, was this. Never risk more than 10% of your capital on any single trade, and when a trade goes against you by more than a small predetermined amount, get out. That's it. That's the secret. Small positions, small losses. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But simplicity is not the same as easy. Following this rule requires discipline that most men don't have. It requires you to put aside your ego. It requires you to admit when you're wrong, quickly and without emotion. It requires you to think in terms of probabilities rather than certainties. Here's the mathematics of it, plain and simple. If you risk 2% of your capital on a trade and you're wrong, you lose 2%. You can be wrong 50 times in a row and you'll still have capital left to trade with. But if you risk 50% of your capital on a trade and you're wrong twice, you're out of the game. Finished. Done. And here's the thing that most speculators never understand. Being right isn't enough. You can be right about the direction of a stock and still lose money if your position is too large and you get shaken out by normal market fluctuations. The market moves in waves, even within a strong trend. If you're positioned too heavily, those waves will wash you out before the main move carries you to profit. I remember a young trader who came to me once, full of fire and ambition. He showed me his analysis of a particular stock. It was good analysis. Sound. He was right about where the stock was headed. But he told me he was going to put half his capital into it. I told him he was making a mistake. I told him to risk no more than 5%. He didn't listen. He thought I'd gone soft in my old age. He put in half his capital just like he planned. And do you know what happened? The stock dropped 15% over the next 2 weeks before it started its climb. He was stopped out. He lost half his capital. And then he watched, sick to his stomach, as the stock proceeded to double over the next 6 months, exactly as he had predicted. That young man was right. But being right didn't matter because his position size was wrong. If he'd listened, if he'd only risked 5%, he would have weathered the drawdown and made a fortune. Instead, he learned an expensive lesson about the difference between being right and making money. The beauty of small trades, the real genius of it, is that it allows you to be wrong. And you will be wrong. I don't care how good you are, how much you study, how perfectly you read the tape. You will be wrong. Often. The greatest speculators in history were wrong more than they were right. But they kept their losses small and let their winners run. That's the whole game. Think about it like this. Speculation is a probability game. You're trying to identify situations where the odds are in your favor. Maybe you find a setup where you believe you have a 60% chance of being right. That's a good edge. That's worth taking. But even with a 60% edge, you're going to be wrong 4 times out of 10. If those 4 losses wipe out your capital, your 60% edge is worthless. You need to structure your trading so that you can afford to be wrong multiple times in a row and still stay in the game. This is where small position sizing becomes not just prudent but essential. If you risk 2% per trade with a 60% win rate and your average winner is twice the size of your average loser, the mathematics work beautifully in your favor. You can string together losses and it won't destroy you. And when you hit that streak of winners, as you inevitably will if you have a real edge, you'll build your capital steadily and safely. But here's where it gets interesting, where the real magic happens. When you trade small, something psychological shifts. When you know that any single trade can only hurt you a little bit, you trade differently, you trade better. You don't grip the wheel so tight that you can't turn when you need to. You don't freeze up when a position goes against you. You simply close it out, take your small loss, and move on to the next opportunity. The fear disappears. Not entirely, of course. If you're not a little bit afraid in this game, you're not paying attention. But the paralyzing fear, the kind that makes you hold losing positions too long or exit winning positions too early, that fear can't take root when your positions are small. You can afford to be wrong. You can afford to let a winner run because you're not risking your entire future on that one trade. I've seen traders, good traders with sound judgment, destroyed not by bad analysis but by fear. They take a position that's too large for their capital. The position moves against them. They know they should cut it loose, but the loss would be so large that they can't bring themselves to do it. So they hold on, hoping, praying that the market will turn in their favor, and sometimes it does. But more often it doesn't, and that large loss turns into a catastrophic loss, one that they can't recover from. When you trade small, you eliminate this psychological trap. You can cut a loss without it feeling like the end of the world. And that freedom, that psychological freedom, is worth more than any hot tip or inside information. It allows you to trade with a clear head. It allows you to follow your rules. It allows you to play the long game. And make no mistake, speculation is a long game. It's not about making a killing on one trade. It's about consistent, disciplined trading over months and years. It's about building a track record that compounds your capital through good times and bad. The speculators who last, who build real wealth, are the ones who think in terms of decades, not days. I've known men who made $1 million on a single trade and thought they'd conquered the market. They increased their position sizes thinking they'd found the secret formula. Within a year, most of them were broke. The market has a way of humbling the arrogant. It has a way of taking back what it gave, often with interest. But the men who built lasting fortunes, who created legendary track records, they did it differently. They ground it out, trade by trade, small position by small position. They weren't trying to hit a home run every time they stepped up to the plate. They were trying to get on base. And over time, those singles and doubles added up to something far more impressive than any grand slam. There's another aspect to this that I want you to understand. When you trade small, you can diversify your opportunities. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. You can have positions in multiple stocks, multiple sectors, multiple strategies. This gives you flexibility. If one sector turns against you, it's not the end of the world because you have other irons in the fire. I learned to trade this way after my third bankruptcy. Instead of taking one large position, I would take several smaller ones. If I had $100,000 to deploy, I wouldn't put $50,000 into one stock. I'd put $5,000 or $10,000 into 5 or 10 different opportunities. This way, if one or two went bad, the others could still carry me forward. And when I found a real winner, I could add to it gradually, building my position as the stock proved itself. This is what I call testing the market. You don't jump in with both feet. You wade in slowly. You take a small position. You see how it acts. If it moves in your favor, you add to it. If it goes against you, you get out with a small loss and look for the next opportunity. This methodical approach might not be exciting, but it works, and in speculation, working is all that matters. I remember in 1924, when I was rebuilding after my third bankruptcy, I followed this approach religiously. I would take small positions, never more than 5% of my capital in any single stock. When a trade worked, I would add to it. When it didn't, I would cut it quickly. It was slow going at first. There were no spectacular wins, but there were also no devastating losses. And month by month, my capital grew. Small wins compounded into large wins, and within a few years I had rebuilt my fortune. The discipline required to trade this way cannot be overstated. Every fiber of your being will want to bet bigger when you're on a hot streak. You'll feel like you've figured it out, like you can't lose. That's precisely when you're most dangerous to yourself. That's when you need to stick to your rules more than ever. Success breeds overconfidence, and overconfidence breeds large losses. I've seen it happen time and time again. A trader has a string of winners. He starts increasing his position sizes. He's making more money than ever before. He feels invincible. And then comes one bad trade. But because his position is now so large that one bad trade wipes out months of gains. If he'd stuck to his original position sizing, that same loss would have been manageable. But greed got the better of him. It always does if you let it. So here we are, at the heart of it. You want to build a legendary track record? You want to be remembered as one of the great traders? Then you need to embrace the unglamorous truth. Small trades, consistently executed over time, are what separate the legends from the footnotes. Think about what a track record really is. It's not a single brilliant trade. It's a long series of trades that taken together show consistent profitability. It's showing that you can make money in bull markets and bear markets. It's proving that you can adapt to changing conditions. It's demonstrating that you have the discipline to stick to your principles even when it's difficult. You can't build that kind of record if you're gambling with large positions. You'll have spectacular wins, sure, but you'll also have spectacular losses. Your equity curve will look like a roller coaster, and eventually, probably sooner than you think, you'll hit a losing streak that you can't recover from. The market will extract its pound of flesh, and you'll be left with nothing but stories about what might have been. But if you trade small, if you're disciplined about position sizing and quick to cut losses, your equity curve will look different. It won't have the dramatic spikes, but it also won't have the devastating crashes. It will grind upward, steadily, relentlessly. There will be drawdowns, of course. No one wins every trade, but those drawdowns will be controlled, manageable. You'll weather them and come back stronger. This is what institutional traders understand that retail traders often don't. The big firms, the ones that have survived for decades, they're not swinging for the fences on every trade. They're managing risk. They're thinking about position sizing. They're protecting their capital. Because they know that the real money in this game isn't made by being right once. It's made by being consistently profitable over time. And here's something else that small position sizing allows you to do. Learn. When you take small positions, you can afford to experiment. You can try new strategies. You can test different approaches. If they don't work, the cost is minimal. But if they do work, you've added a new tool to your arsenal. I experimented constantly throughout my career. I tried different entry techniques, different exit strategies, different ways of reading the tape. Some worked, many didn't. But because I kept my position sizes small during the testing phase, those failed experiments didn't cost me much. And the ones that worked, well, those became part of my edge. They became weapons I could deploy when the right situation presented itself. If I'd been betting heavily while experimenting, I wouldn't have lasted long enough to figure out what worked. The failed experiments would have wiped me out. This is why so many traders blow up. They're trying to learn and make serious money at the same time. It can't be done. You need to pay tuition to the market. You need to make mistakes. But those mistakes don't have to be expensive if you're smart about position sizing. Now, let me tell you about the compounding effect of consistent, small wins. It's not intuitive. Most people think you need big wins to make serious money, but that's not how mathematics works. If you can consistently make 2 to 3% per month with controlled drawdowns, you'll double your money in less than 3 years. Do that for a decade, and you've turned $10,000 into over $100,000. Do it for 2 decades, and that $10,000 becomes over $1 million. But here's the key. You have to stay in the game. You have to avoid the catastrophic loss that puts you out of business. And the only way to do that is to keep your individual trade risks small. Every great trader I've ever known understood this. They might have talked about their big wins, the ones that made the headlines. But behind those big wins was a foundation of disciplined, small position trading that allowed them to survive long enough to catch those big moves. I want to be clear about something. I'm not telling you to think small. I'm not telling you to be timid or afraid. What I'm telling you is to be smart, to be professional, to approach this game with the seriousness it deserves. The market will give you opportunities to make life-changing money. But you have to be there when those opportunities present themselves. And you can only be there if you've protected your capital by trading small and cutting losses quickly. The legendary track record you're after, the one that will set you apart, it's built trade by trade. Each small position is a brick. Each disciplined loss cut quickly is a brick. Each winner allowed to run is a brick. Over months and years, those bricks add up to an edifice that no market crash can topple. Because you've built it on a foundation of sound risk management. I think back on my career, on all the ups and downs, all the fortunes made and lost, and you know what I'm most proud of? Not the $4 million I made in 1929. Not the headlines or the fame. What I'm most proud of is that I figured it out. I learned the lessons. I developed the discipline. I built a system that worked. And at the core of that system was this simple principle. Keep your trades small and your losses smaller. If I could go back and tell my younger self one thing, one piece of advice that would have saved me years of pain and 3 bankruptcies, it would be this. Trade small. Be patient. Protect your capital like it's the most precious thing in the world, because it is. It's your ticket to the game. Without it, you're just a spectator. With it, properly managed, you can build something that lasts. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to look at your current trading. Be honest with yourself. Are you risking too much on individual trades? Are you letting your ego drive your position sizing? Are you trying to get rich on one trade instead of building wealth over many trades? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you need to make a change. Starting today. Starting with your very next trade. Cut your position sizes in half, then cut them in half again. Trade small enough that losing doesn't hurt. Trade small enough that you can think clearly. Trade small enough that you can afford to be wrong. And then watch what happens. Watch how your trading changes. Watch how your psychology shifts. Watch how your results improve. It won't happen overnight. Building a legendary track record takes time. But if you commit to this principle, if you make small position sizing and quick loss cutting the foundation of your trading, I promise you this. You'll still be in the game when others have blown up. You'll be compounding your capital while others are trying to rebuild. You'll be writing your own success story, one small trade at a time. Before you go, do me 2 favors. First, drop a comment below and tell me what you think about this approach. Have you been trading too large? Are you ready to make a change? I want to hear from you. Second, Check out the other videos on this channel. Each one contains lessons I've learned from decades in the market. And don't forget those ebooks I mentioned at the start. Thinking Like Jesse Livermore, Mastering the Market with Discipline, Patience, and Risk, and The Livermore Journal, a 90-day trading psychology workbook. The links are right there in the description. They'll take your understanding to the next level. The market is waiting for you. It will still be there tomorrow, next week, next year. But will you? That depends entirely on how you trade today. Trade small. Trade smart. Build your legendary track record one disciplined trade at a time. That's how the giants did it. That's how you'll do it too. Now get out there and show the market what you're made of. But remember, in this game, the tortoise beats the hare every single time. Slow and steady wins the race. Small and disciplined builds the fortune. That's not just advice. That's the truth. Bought and paid for with my own money, my own mistakes, my own triumphs. Take it from a man who learned the hard way, so you don't have to. Your legendary track record starts with the very next trade you make. Make it a small one, make it a smart one, and then do it again, and again, and again. That's the path. That's the way. That's how legends are born.